Hey, there you are. Good morning. Take a seat. There are plenty of chairs ready for you. And let me check your stocks just to see how the days are going to go. S&P's up a little bit. Tesla's up a little bit. Nvidia's down a little bit. Not bad. Could be worse. Do-do-do-do-do. Do-do-do-do. Ba-ba-bum-bum-ba-bum. Ra-ba-ba-bum. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the highlight of human civilization. It's called Coffee with Scott Adams, and you've never had a better time. But if you'd like to take a chance of elevating your experience up to levels that nobody can even understand with their tiny, shiny human brains, all you need for that is a cup or a mug or a glass, a tankard, shells, a stein, a canteen, jug, a flask, a vessel of any kind. Fill it with your favorite liquid. I like coffee. And join me now for the unparalleled pleasure, the dopamine end of the day, the thing that makes everything better. It's called the simultaneous sip. Go. Mm-mm-mm. Delicious. Well, in news, China allegedly found a million-year-old skull. A million-year-old skull. Oh, I'm getting an update. It wasn't a million-year-old skull. It was Joe Biden. Uh, no, I'm just kidding. It wasn't Joe Biden. It was a million-year-old skull. But since the oldest known human skull was 500,000 years old, this doubles the potential time that maybe humans have been around in their current form. But they got to do genetic tests, and then they'll find out for sure if it rewrites the entire history of humankind. Have you ever believed the anthropologists? I find that I've never believed them. You know, where they find, oh, we found this little fingernail, and this fingernail tells us there's a whole new branch of humanoids. I always think that stuff's just made up. I don't believe any of it. So it just went from, well, the oldest human was about 300,000 years old. Well, no, well, found what is, no, 500,000. 500,000. Oh, no, nope, double that, 1 million. We don't have any idea what was happening back then. Pure guess. Well, Ben Carson, Dr. Ben Carson, has been added to the Maha mix, and he'll be working on improving the nutrition standards, which I love. I love that. I'm sure he's the right person, and I'm sure that this is one of the most important things we should be doing. But I will give this one bit of caution. There's no real nutrition science. I don't know if you know that, but all that, how many vitamins you need and all that, that's all just made up. Back when I was years ago, when I tried to make the product called the dill burrito, a frozen burrito that I tried to put all of the vitamins and minerals you would need for one day. So you might get extra, but you wouldn't be short that day. And what I learned in the process of trying to make a food that had all the vitamins and minerals you need is that the science of which vitamins and minerals and how much you need was changing as fast as we could print the box. And at some point I said, wait a minute, this isn't science. We have no idea what's good for you. It looks like we're just guessing. So that was about when I decided to stop trying to make that product. Well, believe it or not, according to one of the AI observers, Asha Shrivastava, I think that's his name. Maybe it's two words, Ashutosh Shrivastava. Anyway, that's as close as I can get. But anyway, he says that Google's DeepMind AI is now has a version that is ready for general robotics. You know how I've been telling you for a long time now that I don't believe that the current versions of AI, the large language models, I don't believe they can ever be adopted to just be a robot brain because they hallucinate too much and other problems. But allegedly, Google's DeepMind has some version that would be already ready to act as a high level reasoning brain for robots that could do complicated things that it had never done before. So, in theory, you could say, hey, could you wash these grapes? And if it never washed a grape, it could figure out, okay, I need a sink, I need a faucet, I need cold water, not hot water. So that's the idea. I'm going to go full skeptic on this, and I'm going to say that there is no such thing as a general purpose AI that will work in a robot. I don't care what they say. I don't believe it. You know why I don't believe it? If it can actually operate a robot in a general purpose way, you would see so much video of that. It would be all over social media. Look, our general purpose robot just learned to do a thing. Look, it just learned to do another thing. And all I did was tell it what I wanted. If it could do any of that, it would be all the news. So, no, I do not believe that Google DeepMind has a general purpose AI that can run a robot. Maybe someday, but I guarantee if it worked really well right now, you would see the robot. That it wouldn't be a text story about a robot, right? I'm not the only one who sees it that way, right? If it really worked, you would see the video of the robot, doing full robot things. There was a video of one robot arm that acted like it was recognizing different objects. Not impressed. Not impressed. Well, according to MIT Technology Review, James O'Donnell's writing about this, that there's a company that makes drones that can chase shoplifters. So if you buy this product, if you're a store and somebody robs your store, you can push a button and the drone will take off. And then I guess you have to, maybe a human has to spot the bad guy running away. But then once the drone has spotted the bad guy or the bad guy's car, it can follow it. So I don't know what happens when they follow it because I doubt the police are going to get involved anyway. So I don't know what good I don't think the police really chase um, too many shoplifters, and it's probably going to be like a bunch of people. That most of the shoplifting seems to be this gang of 30 people hit it all the same time, and one drone's not going to do much for that. But I kind of like the idea. I would feel safer even if I had one at my house. If somebody tried to do something at your house, and then the drone could get some photographs and take a license plate and make sure it got a picture of the perps, that would be pretty useful. It's called Flock Safety. And I don't know what their tagline is for Flock Safety, but if it were me, I'd say, if you steal from me, flock you. That's how I would do the marketing. All right. Well, the second quarter GDP got revised, as they always do, but higher. So all the way up to 3.8. Now, if you're not a economics nerd, 3.8 GDP, if it were, an honest number, would be really, really good. As in better than we have a right to expect it to be. Like really, really good. 3.8. But don't get excited. It's probably just because the tariffs caused people to buy more and get ready. And once all the tariff stuff settles down, we'll get an idea what the real number is. So do not believe that 3.8 is any kind of a sustainable long-term number. If it is, amazing. I mean, it would be beyond my highest expectations, but it won't be. Don't expect that. But it's better than not being 3.8, that's for sure. There's a new European startup. Okay. Did you know that Europe had startups? If you heard that there's a European startup that was getting ready to solve some big problem, what would be your first thought? My first thought was, nah, no, they won't. Nah, no. No, there's a reason that there aren't many European startups, or there's no, I don't think there are any unicorns, the ones that are worth more than $1 billion. And it has to do with their stultifying, um, what would you call it, regulations and stuff. So basically, you get smothered and taxed to death if you're a startup. But this startup called Euclid, according to Dr. Singularity on X, they're building this massive chip system, he says, that would allow lesser powered chips. I think they're lesser powered. But what it does is use way less power. So what they're doing is building an infrastructure for AI that would be way more power efficient. Now, what I've been predicting for a while is that the money involved in running the energy needed for AI is so big. We're talking trillions of dollars. That for sure there will be startups trying to reduce the energy drain for AI. And for sure, there will be at least incremental improvements, but probably somebody's going to come up with more than an incremental improvement. So my bet is that the big companies will spend $1 trillion on building out power, and some small company will say, you can do it for $1 billion now. We solved the energy problem. So I feel like the most successful AI company might be somebody who hasn't started yet, because the big ones are going to run through it, trillions of dollars. But what happens if the ones that are fast followers just don't need that much energy? Suddenly, you're a peer competitor to ChatGPT at 1/millionth of the cost. So I think that's what's going to happen. Well, you may have heard of this in the news. Apparently, there are reports that seem credible that there's now a major spike in women being admitted into the ERs because they took too much Tylenol while pregnant to show that Trump doesn't know what he's talking about. And at least one woman is essentially brain dead from doing that and has a baby inside her. So her husband has some tough choices about whether to try to deliver the baby or what. I assume that they'll try to deliver the baby, because why wouldn't you? All right, so that's terrible. That's the sort of thing we joked about. Remember how we would always joke? It was an ongoing joke that if you wanted to kill all, just joking, right? Not seriously. That if you wanted to, let's say, do harm to all Democrats, all you'd have to do is say, Trump really loves breathing oxygen, and Trump says you should all breathe oxygen. And they would all hold their breath until they passed down and died. Now, that was the joke. But literally, people are taking the Tylenol and dying. It's not funny, but if you wonder how strong is brainwashing, there you go. When I talk about brainwashing and persuasion and hypnosis and stuff, there's a tendency for people not to really understand how strong it is. Now, it's not as strong with every person in every situation, so that's why it's confusing. But for some people, it is a complete takeover of their mind. And I would say that these Tylenol victims, probably they're victims of not only TikTok or some social media, because they tend to do it publicly. But yeah, they've got TDS, plus they've got social media poisoning. Well, according to Representative Anna Paulina Luna, who apparently is in a position to see all the good secrets before we do, she says that NBC is withholding a never before seen video of Lee Harvey Oswald near President Kennedy's limo at the moment of the assassination, which would mean that he was not involved in any way in shooting the president, if that's true. Now, question number one, why would NBC be holding it as opposed to, let's say, our government in some entity? Why would NBC have the most important video that could ever be, and they're just sitting on it, and now they just decided to release it? Really? I wonder if it'll be a grainy image. I haven't seen it yet, but you want to make a bet? I'm going to make a bet that it looks approximately like this. Oh look! That's totally Lee Harvey Oswald. Do you see him? Yeah, something tells me it's going to look like that. Do you believe that when you see the picture, you're going to say, "Oh my God, that is Lee Harvey Oswald"? Or could it be like those pictures of the 50s, the old videos you see of people walking in the city and they all look the same? In 1963, right? That's what happened. In 1963, every guy approximately that age was the same size. None of them were fat. They all looked exactly like Lee Harvey Oswald. They had the same haircut. They were white guys. They dressed the same. They had the same body, all skinny. Everybody looked like him. I look like him. If I had been around then, yeah, a picture of me would look just like him, at least at some point in my life. All right, so I'm going to say I don't believe anything about that. What do you think? I don't believe any of that. But it gets better. According to Representative Anna Paulina Luna, another story, she says she's getting horrifying reports that in Haiti, organ traffickers are killing people who were found dead on the street with missing organs. So, do you believe that? Do you believe that people are being found with missing organs dead on the street because they're selling their organs? Again, I'm going to go with no, because that's like one of the most that's one of the most famous fake stories of all time. And the people were found in the bathtub with a note, and their kidneys were missing. Okay, no, I don't believe that anybody's been found. I mean, there might have been somebody found that had some damage to their body, and then somebody else said, it looks like they took his kidney, and then then everybody believes it. No, I do not believe that the Haitians are taking organs. I don't believe you could just carve it out with a butcher knife and sell it on the open market. I think it's a little harder than that. Well, you all want to talk about James Comey's indictment. So the indictments have come down. There are two of them. Let's say one of them is that he lied to Congress about having a third person leak to the media, when indeed Andy McCabe has already said, oh yeah, he authorized me to leak. So we've got his number two from the FBI, who interestingly is also sort of on Trump's enemies list, if you will, virtual enemies list, not an actual one. But McCabe probably will be the witness, because he's already said this, probably the witness that takes down Comey. Now, I kind of like that it'll be McCabe who takes him down. But then the second indictment is that he lied to Congress about that have you ever authorized? No. The other one was lying about something. One is obstructing justice, and the other is lying. But I think that they're both based on the same set of acts. Maybe. Anyway, so the background is, that the prosecutor who was in charge got canned for not doing enough. He seemed like he wasn't sort of on board. Might have been more of a Democrat lover than what Trump needed at the point. The statute of limitations was about to run out. That's why there was some urgency, and at least from the Trump side, some urgency. Now, of course, as you expect, the Democrats are going on TV, the talking heads, and they're saying that it's lawfare against Trump's enemies, and that's a bad thing and should never be done, and is setting a precedent. Really? Really is setting a precedent. So going after somebody with lawfare just to end their political career, looking for the crime as opposed to responding to a crime, are you saying that that's wrong, and as if it's never happened to anybody named Trump? I mean, it's the most obvious thing that's happened in the last several years. But the Democrats have no shame, and they also know that their Democrat base won't really be able to follow this story. They're only going to get the top line. So if the Democrats go on MSNBC and say, well, nothing like this has ever happened before. I mean, we've never seen anything like this, going after a political person with a bunch of trumped up charges, or even real charges that normally would be ignored. What? So that's funny, but it's working. On one hand, I'm criticizing the Democrats for such obvious lies. So they're lying about their liar. So Comey's being indicted for lying, under oath. And the response to his supporters is to lie about it. So they're literally lying about the liar. Have I ever mentioned that that's all they have? The Democrats only have hoaxes and lies. They did have lawfare, but not anymore because they're not in charge. All right. And a lot of people are saying that Trump is just after his enemies and it's only about revenge. To which I say, if it's revenge against people who did this to you, absolutely fair. I'm all for revenge if it's specific revenge. I would not like him to be lawfaring somebody who had nothing to do with anything. But lawfaring somebody who was trying to remove him from office and was not a legitimate player, in my opinion, totally fair, absolutely fair. And I think Trump has a free punch all the way up to and including jail. But it has to pass, obviously through some Democrat judge and some Democrat people on a jury and all that. So it would take a lot. It would take a lot to get a conviction. Some people say, oh, yeah, the facts are clear. This is an obvious conviction. Democrats say, oh, no, it's murky. It's murky. I'm not sure. I'm not sure there's anything there. But other people say it's the process that is the punishment. So making Comey go through this expensive, embarrassing thing, might be the real play. Roger Stone, as you know, he was once the subject of the FBI, what would you say, raiding his house at 6 a.m. and giving him no warning. And then apparently the judge in his case gave him a gag order, so he couldn't even talk about his situation. And Roger Stone asked the perfectly reasonable question, wait, why isn't Comey being gagged by the federal judge in his case like I was? In fact, why is he being allowed to turn himself in? Why isn't he subjected to a 6 a.m. raid at his home by 29 heavily armed FBI agents? Well, that's a perfectly good question, Roger Stone. So as long as we see this difference in treatment, it really does give the Republicans a free hand, because what has happened to them, and Trump in particular, but also his supporters over the last several years, is, in my opinion, so bad that I can't even imagine any amount of lawfare against that group of people that I wouldn't be in favor of. But in general, I would not be in favor of any lawfaring against anybody. But this group, oh yeah, they've got it coming. I'm all on board with that. Paul Sperry is reporting on X that Brennan might be next. He's hearing that they're getting ready to do something with Brennan. That might happen soon. And Mike Benz had an interesting summary of the whole situation. He said, arresting all your political opponents for non-existent crimes, then committing a bunch of real crimes, then losing the next election to those opponents is just a really bad combination. Yeah, that's a good advice. If you're going to lawfare people over nothing, at the same time that you're doing something that's actually super illegal, you don't want to lose the next election so that the people you were trying to punish are in charge. But that's what happened. So all right, here's a question for you. If the next president is a Democrat, and let's say somehow the Congress went Democrat too in 2028, do you believe that Trump would be lawfared again? Yes, he would, right? They would lawfare him again just out of pure revenge. They wouldn't be stopping him from doing anything. It would just be pure revenge. Would they do it? Yes, they would. What would you do if you were Trump and you knew that simply, running out your term and leaving, peaceful transfer of power, if you knew that that would be your death or that you would be locked up forever by bad actors, what would you do? Would you leave the job? It would be kind of dangerous, wouldn't it? They've created a situation, which is the only situation I can imagine, where Trump has a overwhelming incentive to never leave the job. Now, I don't believe that he has that intention whatsoever. I believe that he intends to serve his term, do the best job he can, go down in history as one of the great presidents. And that's, he's on track to do that. But if they start making noise like the minute you're out of office, we're gonna put you in jail, and it's going to be trumped up charges, what would you do if you were Trump? Would you say, well, I'll just fight it in the courts? Well, the courts are going to be, Obama appointed judges, and you have no reason to believe he would get a fair hearing in the court. What would you do? You might be tempted to stay in office and stay alive, keep your family alive. Remember, the family is probably in jeopardy too. They would go after Don Jr., or anybody else they could. So the Democrats are creating the situation very much like they created the situation demonizing ICE and demonizing Trump. They created the situation where an assassin was almost guaranteed. They created that. They're now, if they were to get elected, they would be creating a situation where it wouldn't make sense for Trump to leave the office if he had any way to stay. I don't know that that's even possible in our system. The military would have to be on board, and I doubt they would be. So why are they creating the situation that they fear the most? I do think, however, that if J.D. Vance, is looking good and he wins the election, Trump just retires. No problem at all, because J.D. Vance is not going to go after him. But it's going to be pretty important. I think if J.D. Vance doesn't win, I don't know what's going to happen. Yeah, all bets are off at that point, because you expect people to try to stay alive and to do whatever they can to stay in the jail. If you put Trump in that situation, don't expect him to roll over. He should fight as hard as he can. I hate to say it. Well, okay. So there's that. So Kash Patel is telling us that the people who are doing the research on Comey, the investigation, are FBI agents and intel analysts and staff who are career people. So they're not some political people. He's saying that they're, the dependable career people who are doing it. Now, that's so you don't think it's just a political hit. But honestly, I can't tell if Kash Patel is just mocking the Democrats by saying that, because it's sort of just a thing you say. Is he serious? Don't worry, this is legitimate because these are career professionals. Wasn't something like that what they said about Trump when they had all the fake lawfare and the fake Russia collusion thing? Wasn't any part of the defense? Well, yeah, these are career FBI people. I mean, they're not political; they're career people. So Cash is saying the same thing, and it makes me wonder if it's the same reason that they say nobody's above the law. They don't say nobody's above the law because it's the first thing that comes to mind. They say it because the other side said it. It's sort of mocking, but you can't tell. So is this more of that? Is this more mocking, but you can't tell? Because it might be serious. I can't tell. I honestly can't tell, but it looks like trolling. Yeah, Ken Delanian of NBC, who is often identified allegedly as a CIA asset whose job it is to make sure the NBC News does whatever the CIA wants. That's what they allege about Ken Delanian. But he's saying that Trump's actions against his critics and enemies is what do you call it? Never happened before. He's entered the tradition of not doing that. That tradition is so ended. The Democrats completely removed all the guardrails, and now they have to live with it. They're living in the world they created, but yeah, don't expect them to love it. All right. So Trump yesterday signed a memorandum directing the federal agencies to go against, to look for the people funding the domestic terrorists and going after them, Antifa, etc. And he said that would include going after some wealthy people, including, he named George Soros and Reid Hoffman as possible targets of investigation. Now, they would be targets specifically because some of their money might have made it into the hands of some of the domestic terrorists, Antifa types. But we don't know that for sure. That would be alleged at this point. But the New York Times confirms, PJ Media is writing about this, that the DOJ is investigating George Soros. So what do you think they're going to find when they investigate Soros? Are they going to find just a ton of things that look dirty, that are actually illegal? I don't know. But here's what I'd expect. They might have the goods, and they might say, all right, we got you. You did this and that and that. We're going to put you in court. And then magically, as if on schedule, George Soros Sr. would have let's say, a bad health outcome, and he would be way too out of it to actually be in trial. You want to make a bet? I'm going to make the bet that they do find the goods on Soros, but that they can't really hold a trial because he's just going to be like, oh, I'm so old. He's going to do the Biden defense. Okay. If we took you to court, we probably would convict you, but you're only going to be alive 6 months anyway. And you couldn't really defend yourself because you'd just be like, wow, I'm so old. Wow. So I don't think there's any chance that Soros Sr. will, go to jail. I don't think there's any chance of that. He's too old. But maybe Alexander would be, his son, maybe in a little bit of trouble. I don't know. We'll find out. Well, so yesterday there was a little clip of Hillary Clinton being a terrible person. And I reposted it with just one comment. I said, worst human being in the world. Now, if you're on X, do you feel like that would be like a big post, lots of attention? All I said was, worst human being in the world. Like, it's not really clever. It's not new. It's not breaking news. It's not a meme. It's just an opinion. Worst human being in the world. It got 1 million views. 1 million views. That's how many people immediately embrace the idea that she's the worst human being in the world. Can you imagine if somebody says you're the worst human being in the world, and 1 million people immediately say, "Oh yeah, yep, you're not second. You're the worst in the world." So here's a question that I do ask every now and then, but this is another time to ask it. Is it my imagination and my tremendous bias that Republicans look like ordinary people, and the top Democrats, the ones you see the most on TV, I usually call them the designated liars, they look evil? Am I wrong? If you watch the video of Hillary, she doesn't seem like just somebody who disagrees. Take Hillary, take Kamala. In my opinion, Kamala, maybe incompetent or whatever, but I don't think she's evil per se. Like, she doesn't project evil, but Hillary does. I mean, I just see evil when I look at her. And again, it's not a woman thing or even a Democrat thing. I don't see evil when I see, any other, like Nancy Pelosi. I don't see evil. I think she's a liar and she's a, partisan, etc. But she's just sort of doing her job. But with Hillary, she just seems actually evil. Like if demons were real. I don't know. But then look at the others. Raskin. You telling me Raskin doesn't look evil? Or Schiff or Comey. I think Comey doesn't look as evil. Comey looks more like a weasel. Like, you can not like what he does, but he doesn't look evil. He obviously looks like somebody who lied, but that's not that unusual. I wouldn't say evil, but how about Brennan? Brennan comes off as evil. You can't possibly look at that guy and say, "Oh, there's somebody who plays between the lines." He just looks like a demon. What about Blumenthal? Evil. What about Hakeem Jeffries? Hakeem Jeffries is the most evil-looking face I've ever seen in my life. Now, the things he says are more ordinary Democrat things, but oh my God, if you were going to cast a demon or a bad guy in a movie, you would cast him pretty quickly. What about Clapper? There's something with Clapper. I don't know what it is, right? And what about several of the Democrat lawyers? I won't name names, but you know which ones I'm talking about. They've got several TV lawyers, not all of them. Eli Honig is a perfectly reasonable guy, but they've got several lawyers that just come off as evil. They don't even come off as just biased, just evil. And I'm trying to think. So, yeah, you know what I'm talking about. So here's what I'm trying to decide. You always have to check yourself for bias. Are there prominent Republicans who are always in the news who have a persona that comes off as like a demon? And I couldn't think of one. I think of the people in the news, obviously Trump. Trump is just Trump. He doesn't have any, demon vibes. Um, what about, Thune? Thune just looks like a regular guy. What about Tom Cotton? Regular guy. I mean, I could go down the list, but I'm not wrong, right? Just the demeanor, the face, the way they act. There are liars everywhere, and there are biased people everywhere. But the amount of people that are Democrat leaders who are actually evil is weird. I saw somebody say John McCain. I might have given you John McCain if he were still around. I might have said, somebody saying Steve Miller. Stephen Miller is a little bit of a hybrid. There was a time when I would have said, okay, you got me. Stephen Miller is a scary persona. But at the moment, he's projecting extreme competence and doing exactly what most of the base wants him to do. So I believe he's managed his brand from, wow, you're kind of scary, to you're still kind of scary, but you're doing what we want you to do. You're doing the scariness that we demand of you. So I would say that I have a different impression of him than maybe 5 years ago. Anyway, speaking of Hakeem Jeffries, he was just at a Black Caucus conference, and he said that Republicans are pushing white supremacy, invoking Jim Crow, the KKK, and lynching. Now, you're a real piece of shit if that's your message to Black America. I mean, what can you say about Hakeem Jeffries but pure piece of shit, especially in the context of the rhetoric being too extreme and cause violence? What would cause? I mean, this is just so damaging. This is beyond, just a mistake. This is evil. This is just pure, unadulterated, fucking evil. How does he get away with that? Anyway, there's big news in the so-called Tina Peters case. I guess she's in court because she did some things with some voting machines, trying to determine if there were some irregularities in the 2020 election, and did something that got her in trouble. But the new news is that they have, I guess, on her side, Emerald Robinson is posting on this, that apparently they have a witness who claims, and the witness is from Venezuela. Remember the Kraken? When Sidney Powell said, there's a general in Venezuela and they can manipulate the voting machines, blah, blah, blah. And then that turned out it got debunked. I don't know if it was untrue, but it got debunked. Well, now there's a Venezuelan witness. We don't know much about him because he's afraid for his life. So he's operating anonymously from us. And he alleges that the voting machines, I'll give you the question and the answer. The question was, sir, do you have personal knowledge, right? So it's got to be personal knowledge, whether the election systems in the U.S., the voting systems, can be manipulated by foreign agents? The answer was, the electoral systems of the United States can be manipulated by foreign agents or third parties. Do you think that testimony is going to hold? I'm going to say no. I would vote against this holding up as a fact. It could be that this is just another Kraken. another intentionally fake story to make it even harder to know what really is true. So, while I don't trust voting machines as a general statement, and I don't believe that they should be part of our system because we can't trust them. There's no way you could know. But is this one witness telling the truth, and does this person know the truth? I'd bet against it. Yeah, I'd bet against it. But maybe I could be, I would love to be wrong about that, but I'd bet against it. And the bet against it is only based on the fact that there have been about a billion election claims, and they always turn stale. They never really pan out. So if this is the real one, well, I just don't want to do the Charlie Brown football thing where I keep going, hey, I think this was real. Finally, we got a real one. Maybe, but I'm not gonna embrace that. I would need more. John Solomon of Just the News is reporting that we've just learned that the FBI had 274 agents at the Capitol on January 6th. And allegedly, they were plain clothes. They didn't have a way to identify themselves even to each other. And I guess they thought they were ill-prepared and ill-managed in what they were supposed to do when they were there. But 274, and that would just be the FBI. How many other entities would have had undercover people there? What do you think? And would 274 agents, would that be enough to cause the crowd to go a certain direction that maybe it wouldn't have? And the answer is yes, that is enough people that if those people wanted to make sure there was trouble, they could very easily, with that number of people, I mean, even much less, it would probably only take a dozen people to initiate something like knocking on a window or something like that. But 274, it becomes easy. You could absolutely manage the entire nature of the crowd with 274 people. You would just have to make sure that those people were the loudest, most aggressive, and then other people would sort of follow. It wouldn't take that much. Now, I don't know if that makes a difference. Knowing that there were 274, I don't know. Does that really change how you think about the whole thing? Because I don't think you even needed the agents to create the riot. I think that some people were going to be bad, and they were. Most people were there to protest, not to form an insurrection. But the bad guys, the Democrats, called it an insurrection because they could, but I'm not sure that the number of agents really makes a difference in the narrative. It's good to know, but it might not make a difference. Let's see. Apparently, some element of Antifa issued an anti-ICE threat before the shooting, and so that's scary. But since Antifa is not really a fully organized entity, I don't think it means much that one Antifa person said something that's sort of what Antifa says. Jesse Waters was reporting that Gavin Newsom had ordered just before the shooting, not long before, just hours before, I think, ordered what he called a code red, and ordered his base to, quote, push back against what he called the Gestapo, meaning ICE. So you got Newsom calling ICE Gestapo and saying you should push back. How do you push back against the Gestapo? Is it by talking really cleverly? Hey, we've got to defeat the Gestapo. Let's come up with some good arguments. No. Hey, we got to beat the Gestapo. We better organize people to sign up to vote. No. The one and only way you stop the Gestapo is with violence. And for Newsom to imagine that he could use that kind of word, and that it wouldn't trigger somebody to pull a trigger, I don't know. He's either stupid or evil. And by the way, Newsom does not give me the evil vibe of the other Democrats, which makes him more dangerous because I think he could actually get elected under some set of circumstances. I think he's a weasel. I don't think he's capable. I think he's not, he's capable of getting elected, but I don't think he's competent. But we'll see. Well, meanwhile, over in Denmark, there have been these drones that have been over their airports, and they don't know what that's about. Well, the Prime Minister of Denmark just addressed the nation and admitted that they don't know what those are. So apparently it's not Denmark's, and they apparently haven't ruled out anything, haven't ruled out China or non-human intelligence or anything else. And apparently, yeah. So, what do you think they are? What do you think all these drones are? Well, I'll tell you the one thing. If you thought that the modern industrial countries all had good control over their own skies, apparently not. Apparently not. Apparently you can just fly a big old drone, because these are not that small. These would be the biggest, larger size drones. You can fly a drone over their country as long as you want. You can fly over anything you want, no matter how proprietary or anything else. And then you can leave whenever you feel like it, and nobody will even know where you went back to. That does not give me any feeling of safety about anything. Anyway, so we don't know what that's about. But I will tell you, it's very unlikely that it's a alien, and it's some human being's drone, and we don't know why they're doing it. Well, in the scariest news I've ever seen in my life, besides the pandemic, the first days of the pandemic when we didn't know what it was. So apparently, Pete Hegseth in the Department of War is ordering all the top generals and admirals to meet at Quantico, Virginia today, but sometime around now. And we don't know why. Now, does that scare you, that all the top military people are being brought to a secure location to get new instructions? Does that sound like we're about to go to war with a major country? Maybe. But there's some other possibilities. One possibility is it's just part of the saber rattling with Russia. So, Putin and Trump are in this, this war of words, but they back up the words with a little saber rattling. It's like, hey, we've got a big navy sitting right outside your doorstep. Hey, we've got a nuclear triad. Look at us testing some new missiles. So it could be that it's entirely to send a message to Russia that if you want war, we're ready. Maybe. Yeah, so maybe it's just part of the negotiations. Maybe. I mean, it wouldn't be the worst move in the world to make Russia think, why are all those generals meeting? Have we gone too far? Because it looks like our plan is to push Russia into economic disaster if we can. And what would they do in return? Would they bomb our homeland to take out some of our energy production? Well, that would be war. So it could be that we know that we've got Russia in a corner, and the only thing they can do to respond before we destroy their energy economy, and when I say we, I mean Ukraine, with our weapons, it could be that we just want to make sure that Russia knows they don't have that option of going military to respond to that. Maybe. Or maybe they're prepping to attack Venezuela. But would you need to pull in every top leader if you were going after Venezuela? I feel like you wouldn't want too many people to know what was going on. If they were, let's say you were the general assigned to some far part of the world, would you really need to know if Venezuela was going to be targeted? You probably don't need to know. It'd be better if you didn't, so the news doesn't get out. But I would say probably not about Venezuela, because you wouldn't get everybody. You would get every person if it was about Russia. You would get every person if it was about China. Say Taiwan, for example. It could be. I saw it suggested that it might be to tell people that they either have to be with the program. Let's say it's the Hegseth/Trump program of what they want the military to be. You either have to be on board with that completely, or we're going to fire you today. So it could be sort of a loyalty test to just say, look, if you do this set of things, we're going to fire your ass. We have no tolerance for it anymore. You can't be woke. You can't be leaking things. You're just gone. You're more gone than gone if you do anything that we find disloyal or not on board. So it might be that, which would make sense to have everybody there. But what other reasons would they not tell us? So it has to be in the category of things that they don't think the what? 5 minutes left if Scott does what? Oh, 5 minutes before the top of the hour. All right. So we'll find out what that is. I have to say that the 800 generals is scary. But one of the possibilities is that Earth is being attacked by aliens. They're already in Denmark, flying around, and the U.S. needs to do a full military push to defend against the alien armada that's coming our way. Maybe. I wouldn't bet on that one. I'm not going to bet on the aliens. Of all these possibilities, I would say it's either sending a message to Russia or something about modernizing or changing the nature of the entire military. So they're either going to reorganize, fire the disloyal, or send a message to Russia. Those would be my best guesses. Now that there's seemingly undeniable evidence that the political left is the ones that are dangerous in terms of violence, because this latest shooter, the ICE shooter, now Adam Kinzinger is on CNN, and he goes, the thing we need to be looking at is not, is this right or is this left? So suddenly it's not important if it's coming mostly from the left or mostly from the right. And it became not important the minute it became obvious it was more coming from the left. Now, my take is I really don't care too much because I think that there's plenty of violence coming from everywhere and for every damn reason. Sometimes crazy, sometimes political, sometimes trying to impress Jodie Foster. I mean, it's coming from everywhere all the time. So to me, that's not the most interesting thing to talk about. But what is interesting is the way we talk about things, inspiring a certain set of people, but not a certain other set. I don't see anything that the Republicans are saying that would stimulate somebody to kill. But I see plenty of things, like every single day, from the left that should, by all logic and everything you know about the world and everything you know about people and everything you know about influence and persuasion, it should create a bunch of killers. And that's what we observe. 4 so far? 2 assassins, one Charlie Kirk, one on ICE. I mean, that's 4 that were almost certainly inspired by the way Democrats talk. So that's important. Also coming from Representative Luna, he had a picture on X of a bot farm. Now, a bot farm is a bunch of smartphones that are sort of tacked on shelves, and there's hundreds and hundreds of smartphones, and the smartphones, I guess, are programmed to act independently like bots to move the conversation online to make it look like something is more popular than something else. But I have a question. How do you know it's a bot? It seems to me that it wouldn't be that hard to spot. And I've accused a number of people on my timeline of being bots. I just say obvious paid troll or obvious bot or something like that. And surprisingly, a lot of them don't push back. Sometimes they do. They go, "No, I'm real. This is who I am." Sometimes you don't hear from them again, which suggests maybe they were bots. But I would love to see some examples of some known bot messages, because I believe it'd be like AI. You know how easy it is to spot AI. I believe you could spot a bot once you've seen the pattern. So if there's anybody who could do that, it would be really useful. Is there anybody who has any kind of data of known bot messages on any topic? Because I'm sure they operate similarly. So I'd like to know more about those bots. Trump said that, quote, "I will not allow Israel to annex the West Bank." Nope, I will not allow it. It's not going to happen. There's been enough. It's time to stop now. Okay. Now, does that answer the question of who's in charge? Do you believe that Trump means it and that he has the ability to stop Israel from annexing the West Bank? I don't know if they want to annex it, but if they did, could Trump stop it? See, this is why I think it's not so much Israel is just, wagging the dog and running the United States. It seems like that sometimes. Depends on the question. But don't you think it works both ways? I've said it before. It seems more like a sibling situation where you can both influence each other. And it kind of depends who cares the most about it, right? So Trump is saying he cares a lot about this, about the possibility of annexing and doesn't want it to happen. And that probably is enough to stop it from happening. But likewise, there are probably things that Israel says privately to Trump. Look, we just have to do this. You can disagree with us, but we're going to do it anyway because this is it's too important. We just have to do this. So I feel like it's more like an ongoing conversation where both sides are trying to make the point of what's more important and what matters to them the most. And then it's just sort of negotiated a little bit. So I don't believe that Israel calls all the shots. They definitely have way more influence than most of us are comfortable with. I would say that. But it's always a negotiation, I think. Well, Iran and Russia signed a $25 billion deal for building nuclear power plants in Iran. So, it makes me wonder how that partnership is working out. Because Israel and Iran get along pretty well. Russia and Iran get along pretty well. Russia is really good at getting along with the worst dictators. Maybe we should learn something from them. All right, Zelensky in Ukraine says there's no way to have an election unless they have a ceasefire. And do you think he wants a ceasefire? So he says, "I don't want to lead the country in peacetime." He actually said that. Doesn't want to be the leader in peacetime. Really? I think it's a problem when the person who is in charge of a ceasefire believes that they would get fired from their job if they did what the country wants them to do. Because he sort of would get fired. I mean, he probably wouldn't win an election anyway. So why would we ever expect Zelensky to operate in good faith? That's a lot to ask. It's a lot to ask anybody. Well, in other news that was sort of predictable, China has banned NVIDIA chips to be purchased in China. Now, Wouldn't you think that that's what they would want more than anything is NVIDIA chips? Apparently, they couldn't get the top best ones, but they could get the ones just below that. And if they put them together, they could get some stuff done. But apparently, according to Andrew Ng, China has now figured out how to use their own chips in a configuration where the system level design of the chips can get them the same output as the NVIDIA, or at least in the ballpark. And they don't need NVIDIA to do everything that we do with NVIDIA. So once again, if you thought NVIDIA would rule the roost forever, well, maybe it's already over. If China doesn't need NVIDIA to be as competitive as they think they need to be, I don't know. I think the competition for NVIDIA is going to be pretty intense. Meanwhile, in the stupidest state in the world, California, there's a law that the governor hasn't signed yet, but he might, limiting free speech in California. So if you say something on social media that somebody calls violence, intimidation, or coercion, you can be arrested. Now, that's if Newsom signs it. If he signs it, that will be one more thing working against him for running for president. So I feel like I'm going to guess that he won't sign it because I think he has to go for free speech if he's going to run for president. So, but I might have to move out of California if this becomes a real thing because I got canceled for complaining about people not liking me. But that turned into I don't like other people, which was never part of the conversation. I've never even offered an opinion other than I like Black Americans. I love them. I've only had good experiences personally on a personal level. So if somebody like me can say, oh, I'm worried about other people not liking me, and that can turn into you hate a certain demographic group, is that violence, intimidation, or coercion? Because remember, words are violence, right? Can I be arrested just for doing what I do every day? I don't know. And then Kelsey Piper, who was writing on X, that California, only 28% of Black students in California can read at basic level or above the 4th grade level. But in Mississippi, where you would think, oh, that Mississippi is a backward state, how are they doing? I mean, if California only has 28% of Black students reading, must be really bad in Mississippi, right? Nope. Mississippi is 52%, about twice as good. Why? Because Mississippi and apparently several southern states have completely changed how they do education. And I think, I don't know the details, but I think they just moved back to more of a traditional model, one that works, and it works. So if you were a Black family, you would probably thrive in Mississippi better than California. If what you cared about was your kid's education. Isn't that wild that things could be so opposite of what you would imagine? Anyway, the European Union is going to put some tariffs on steel in China, really high tariffs, which reminds me of Trump. So I had this thought that I posted today, and it goes like this. First, you laugh at Trump, then you fight him, then you become him. First, you laugh at him, then you fight him, then you become him. Now, that's a little bit borrowed from another saying that you'll recognize, but isn't that what's happening? Newsom is literally pretending to be Trump. First, you laugh, then you fight, then you become him. That's the ultimate victory, having people become you. Anyway, that story is boring. The U.S. apparently, according to Interesting Engineering, is going to convert a retired coal mine into a nuclear fusion power plant. I said fusion. Fusion isn't even a real technology yet, is it? And they're actually building the plant. Money is going into it. Well, turns out that there are a couple of ways to do fusion, and one of them works and is stable. And it's stable enough and it works well enough that it's really just an engineering question. And so we're building a fusion reactor in our lifetime. Be done by 2030, they want it to be. But it's called stellarator fusion technology. So if you want to act like the smartest person at the party, stellarator is the good stuff. But there's also other fusion projects are getting funded in a big way. And the other one is, let's see, Commonwealth Fusion Systems got another customer. So they have customers, but they don't have a technology that is proven to work. But they're really close. So people are putting billions into it in the hope that it can be commercialized. So that's where we're at. Yeah, it's boring. According to the Federalist, a number of corporations and academic offices, they have DEI offices and DEI employees. Well, apparently, in a number of these cases, the DEI people were H-1B visa workers. In other words, they were non-Americans who were telling Americans whether they could have, what they could do and what they couldn't do based on their race. Now, it's obnoxious enough when an American tells me what I can and cannot do based on my race and my gender, but do you really want somebody from another country telling what you can and cannot do in your own country? No, thank you. No, thank you. And in case you're wondering, J.D. Vance, according to a Rasmussen poll, 51% of U.S. voters have a favorable opinion of him, which is pretty darn good, 51%. So J.D. coming on strong. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I went a little bit long, but not too bad. And I'm going to say some words privately to my beloved members of Locals, subscribers. And the rest of you, thanks for joining. And hope to see you tomorrow. Same time, same place. We'll have some more fun. You'll get smarter every time you do this. All right.